I think this event has so far had a pretty authoritarian structure, so we'll open up for the audience now, since we are modern people. So we spend the next 30 minutes. 30 minutes in a dialogue with all of you. Just give a signal to me, and then you will be in the spotlight. Ellen Altenborg, please.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Ellen Altenborg. I would like to raise another question. There was a study here in Norway on media usage published this summer that had a quite surprising finding on gender. It turned out that women had less usage and less interest and were less knowledgeable about news than men, and in particular younger women, which was the most surprising. Is there anything in this study that can shed some light?
Absolutely, yes. So I should say that the data that we have is available for anyone to use. So if you would like to use it, we're making it available to media companies, to academic researchers, so you can dig through it and look at the demographics, which are often very fascinating. In general, news, particularly people going directly to news websites, in most countries is skewed to men. So women tend to go to news websites much less. Now, the question is that because of the agenda of those newsrooms, that they're pursuing a very male agenda? Because it doesn't have to be that case. There are some news organisations like the Daily Mail, for example, in the UK, which is skewed 60%, 40% in favour of women. So there's clearly a lot to do with the agenda that the business stories, the sort of world news agenda. The other thing that's really interesting is the extent to which Facebook is very driven by, Facebook news is driven by women. So that skews heavily, social media generally, but Facebook in particular skews much more towards women. So I think it's partly around agenda and the type of agenda that relates that is being produced by often male-dominated newsrooms, and it's partly around platform and ease of use. I don't know if there are other studies around gender.
I'd just like to add that, well, the study that you're referring to, Ellen, is called Bruksmangfold, and I'd recommend it for any Norwegian reading members of the audience. It's paid for by the Mediemangfoldsutvalget. And it's an interesting study, I think, partly for the reasons that you give, Ellen. But it also shows, and again, there are divisions there, right? Between the kind of users, it can depend on gender, but it also depend on the level of income, the level of education you have where you live in the country and stuff like that. And that matters for whether or not you're willing to seek news, right? Willing to spend time actually looking for it, or if you just want to get it as part of the general feed of your media use. And it's important when we discuss these issues. Also when we discuss the increasing levels of subscriptions in online newspapers, because the people actually are willing to pay. Norway was on the top of the list there, and in terms of how many people actually have paid for news online. If you look into the demographics of that group, I would suspect that you get it.
You don't have to suspect. They are younger, from 26 to 30 something, and they are women. The new digital subscribers. So that's what is fueling the growth now. It's younger women outside Oslo, well educated.
The name is Sigurd Høst. I would like to say something about this question. Why is 27% of Norwegians paying for online news? And I've read the report, and I don't think the answer there is good enough. The answer is very simple. If you look at the question, it is, have you read it is not, do you want to pay? It is, have you accessed a news site where you have to pay? And most of the Norwegian now they experience a situation where they have a double subscription. this subscription to the paper version, is also giving them free access to a news site with a paywall. So that they don't have to think about paying. If they pay for the printed edition, they also pay for access to the paywall. And that is the result of an amazing development for the last 2 or 3 years. At the end of 2011, only 5 Norwegian papers had paywalls on the news sites. At the end of 2015, 125 newspapers had paywalls on the news sites. And most of these paywalls were connected to this combined subscription, paper plus digital. So, and that, you talked about invention. I think the Norwegian media has really been inventive for the 3 or 4 last years, making this, establishing this system and making it work.
I think it's only. I mean, I think that seems very plausible and very likely to me. I think there are a couple of things. One is that very few other countries have the same level of subscriptions and therefore being able to do it. I mean, some Nordic countries have, but others haven't. Other places where they've tried everyone to do subscriptions, like Canada, they've had to row back from that because there's just too much other free news, there's too much competition, that it's not been possible for probably what's possible in smaller countries. So I think it is partly to do with the higher subscription levels, but it also is true because publishers are acting together, and that together with the high subscriptions has made that possible.
I think also there might be some mechanisms adding to that. I think we are becoming better at this. What we used to do maybe 2 years ago was just to publish the newspaper and try to get people to pay for it. Now we work in the editorial team. Every journalist work with how to present a story in a way that it also converts. We actually have a language in how we communicate with the readers, where we invite them. We make it much simpler, almost week by week, to actually buy and so on. And then also there, of course, we are helped by the music and film industry, where also not many years ago there was, the truth was that it was not possible to get paid for music in the digital sphere, but now it is possible, and it's more than possible. It's what we all do. So I think there is acceptance out there that if you want something of a certain quality, you will have to pay somehow. So a much more mature market.
And just talking from a non-subscription newspaper, we're seeing the same as well. I mean, I notice in the report that it says that Dagbladet has 14,000 subscribers, and we're double that now, over double that. So it's growing fast. So something's happening. I mean, user behavior and expectations are changing.
Anders?
Apologies for that number. I was going to make it fine. I did look into the numbers a bit when I was doing that bit, and I think, as you say, that the bundle of the paper subscription with the digital is a bit, because if you look at the numbers from Medieverdenen Landsforening, it's around 8% that are paying for pure digital, whereas 63% have a bundle. And if you ask, have you the last year paid for, you'll sort of include everybody. And we have other numbers from, for instance, TNS, which are more like 11% or something. So I'm afraid the number is probably a bit lower.
When I listen to Sigurd Høst now, I remember that we mustn't forget some of the most basic facts about Norwegian media. For example, that this small country has 228 newspapers, and the number is pretty stable for years now. And we have one of the world's best public broadcasting services. So it's important not to forget the basic facts, and also a very active public policy for media. Professor Mo?
And when you're saying this, Knut Olav, it reminds me that according to SSB, 12% of Norwegian pensioners still used teletext text-TV on an average day in 2015.
12%. Yeah, you are an expert on teletext, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, you published a book on it a few months ago, didn't you? On text, we are talking about text TV, which is still very much alive. Yeah, it's you now.
Thank you for doing this. As a journalist at Dagsavisen, Aftenposten's struggling competitor, and as a writer who's going to a video class tomorrow, this is very interesting, all of it. I was wondering if you've looked into what kind of news people look at in different platforms, and if political news particularly changes the way news users behave. And I was thinking also about the current election campaign in the US, with Donald Trump has been a huge user magnet, if you can say so. Thank you.
We've looked at a little bit, not hugely. So obviously different networks have different, use more or less for politics. Twitter in the US and in the UK, and I guess in Nordic countries as well, it's really an influencer network. So it's used by journalists, it's used as a sort of a starting point. And because it's all about real time, it's also where a lot of these things gain traction and then they get amplified by mainstream media. So I think the relationship between Twitter and mainstream media is utterly crucial in understanding how modern news works, particularly political news. And one of the things we asked, I think it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, was, you know, what are the things that you share most in Twitter, and politics is right at the top. In Facebook, as you know, it's big when there's something massive happening or there's something funny happening, but the nature of the kind of news that is shared and used in Twitter is very different, as you know, as these guys will tell you. So for videos, for example, there's a lot of political videos in Facebook, but they're much more about the comedy or the moment. They're much less about the sort of the immediate real-time news. So I think a lot of what we've done is really about the different nature of those networks, but I think crucially how they interact with mainstream media as well. And I think we've seen that in the States.
If anyone else has got any comments?
Well, I just find it, I mean, it's really interesting how algorithms, for example, on Facebook can affect what kind of news you get, and these sort of echo chambers and things like that, especially in terms of political coverage. And I think we were talking about news earlier, and I just think there's a huge responsibility for both these giants like Google and Facebook, but also us as media companies who follow ethical standards and should be doing not sort of just report whatever and have no sort of critical sense or that we work together to actually educate our users somehow to be able to be critical. I think we're not good enough at it, and I think we're talking to Google about it in some ways. There's a trust project over in the US where they're researching this, but Facebook in particular, I think there's a huge issue with that, and that really needs to be addressed. And you see it quite heavily with the US election now. I'm getting all sorts of just campaign videos now, endless campaign videos, both from Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It's this sort of hate thing, and you're like, what? It's not, you can't really trust it. And if that's sort of you don't really, you can't, if you're not critical to that, and there's nothing alerting you to it, then that's a problem.
I think one of the things that's happened in social media, we saw this in the Brexit campaign with politics, is it compresses everything. It quite often compresses it into an image or into a particular comment, And some of those things really go viral. So it's very hard to tell long, complicated stories political stories in social media. And so we see these sort of memes or little visual having huge impact, I think, politically. There's some really good examples and some bad examples in the Brexit campaign, but I think that issue of compressed news is one of the things that it's not always bad, by the way. Compressed storytelling can be fantastic, but it can also obviously distort. It certainly fragments.
Thank you very much. My name is Andre Lunde. Just looking at the data here, print remains the main source of revenue, as it says in the report here from Norway. But it's a rapidly shrinking lifeline because it keeps going down. It's done so consistently over several years, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. But even in a market where willingness to pay for online news, which of course is moderated by the factors of bundles and so on, even there, online revenues are still not making up for that decline. Revenues keep shrinking at an alarming rate. How long until you manage to turn this around? Do you yourself believe that you'll be able to turn around at some point? Do you actually believe that will happen? And do you think you can live on the print revenue long enough for that to actually happen before someone actually buckles, the first Norwegian major media house buckles?
That's that.
We don't really know, to be honest. It's really hard to predict what happens. Just give you an example. If Hildegunn here decides to only publish Dagbladet on Saturday, then VG will have to carry the costs of transportation of the newspapers alone. Today they have a company together and shares the cost. Then maybe they have to reduce. Then Aftenposten is in trouble, because what could be a really good position to be the largest newspaper, suddenly you get all the cost for the printing, for example. It's really, really hard to predict. We are working with it now, though, to try to do that. But I think you have a good point. No big secret, Aftenposten, 77% of revenue is from print. Digital growing fast, though. I have to add that. What's happening now is when the advertising market for print is falling steeper than we anticipated, it really hurts us. We don't manage to make the whole printing and distribution operation leaner fast enough. We have been incredibly good at this in Norway, to make it leaner the last 2, 3, 4 years. But the pace, everything is happening now, is really a challenge for us. So, yes, I think it's fair to say now that we can see a future for news operations like Aftenposten and BT based on digital subscription, that being the largest income base. I think we are very close to cracking that code now. But of course, the next few years now, next 10 years, handling that enormous operation it is to run 6 print mills and the full distribution, it will be really challenging.
Well, from a different perspective, obviously we don't have that subscription base, but that's what we're working on all the time, and we can't just look at one. There's not like just getting subscriptions. Well, for us right now, we have to try out lots of different things at the same time. We have to do experiments, we have to try out things, see if we can scale it, and that's sort of the constant focus all the time. And it's very hard having to do both legacy and digital, sort of doing the transformation, the change constantly at the same time. It's incredibly hard. You can't sort of do both it's hard to do both. It's like this sort of gass og brems, as we talk about in Norway constantly. That's not really working, is it? That sort of, you have to do both. But I was quite optimistic looking at what you were saying in the research about the trust in brands and the fact that you have, I mean, now you look at New York Times, who are doing very well, and maybe because also they have this sort of, they have a special trust in terms of how things have been going with the US election, that could have, maybe it's even strengthened it more than CNN, for example. I don't know, but...
I think Norway's in a better place, although things are bad. In some English-speaking countries, the last year has been absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
In terms of the percentage fall in advertising revenues, for some people, 30% fall in print advertising in 1 year for some publishers in the English-speaking world, and that, if that's the majority of your income, if print is the majority of your income, that's people are really suffering. Even the New York Times has seen a huge fall, significant fall. I think it was about 12% of those results fall in print advertising, and so the increase in digital subscriptions is not making up, even for the New York Times. So in the English-speaking world, it's really difficult, and if the current level of problems in print continue and accelerate, then I think we're inevitably going to see more consolidation. That will raise a whole load of issues of plurality. I think it's absolutely inevitable we're going to see more consolidation in a lot of these countries.
Hi, my name is Cornelia Christiansen. I work with social media in Dagbladet, and now obviously I know a lot about the trends about what's working in social media. But what actually puzzles me the most is that we still have like 90% of our page views on the site. So like we have a lot of unique users that we get from Facebook, but like in terms of how much people actually read, the majority is still like on our page, and that is not what I expected. And I'm wondering, like, do you know how is it other places where they have legacy newspapers with a lot of free content, and how far will it go? And in terms of the media history, it's usually like you get new technologies and then the others kind of get their own, how they work, and then and I'm like, because I go to Facebook immediately in the morning. I don't go to the Dagbladet app, so I'm like, are people going to be more like me or not?
Yeah, well, we're talking about some of the newer brands. So some of those newer brands, like BuzzFeed, talk about 75% of their content is from social media, something like 25% is from Snapchat alone in terms of their traffic. So they're fundamentally distributed brands with a little bit of destination. They recognise increasingly they need more destination and less distribution, because if they're going to have long-term relationships with consumers, which is what they want, they need to build that up. But at the moment, they're primarily, whereas brands like the BBC are still, and I guess some of your strong brands are still much stronger destination brands. So it is very different for different kinds of brands. And you probably want to mix. I mean, clearly you want to mix, don't you? Because you want to reach people who aren't going to come to your destination. So it's about trying to find the right balance for you.
We have two more from the hall, I think. At the far back, Janice Gundersen.
Hello. Just a really quick question. You touched upon it with the Trump election, with the election and the Brexit. Can you pinpoint some of the, or at least one of the local newspaper failure, or in terms of influencing that vote, or where do you see the overview of the local influence to the voters in the population? How could they have made it, given it more exposure on which key decision they should take in that vote? Can you name one local newspaper or one local region that could have made a difference in terms of
the UK?
Yeah, because it's a lesson that we could learn from.
I don't think it's just about media at all. I think that it's a whole range of factors, and social media and the media coverage was reflecting things that people felt, an alienation with institutions, with the EU, I think it's such a long-term thing as well. In the UK, for 20 or 30 years, the UK people have been told through the tabloid newspapers primarily that the EU was a bureaucratic institution that legislated about bananas and all kinds of crazy stories that appeared every day. And over 40 years, that's made people believe that that's what the EU is about. So it's no mistake that was made recently. It's the combination of some of the things I was talking about in terms of the way social media is working and the emphasis more on emotion rather than facts. So I think that's been a contributing factor, but it's not the only thing. In general, the tabloid newspapers were were for Brexit, so they were for leave, but there were many newspapers that were supporting it. The whole, all the political parties, the trade unionists, the Confederation of British Industry, everyone was lining up to stay, and people did their own thing, and social media made it easy for them to express that and share it.
And I also think it should be pointed out for us Norwegians that the UK media are, or the UK printed media are much more partisan than in Norway. So, whereas Norwegian media is sort of objective-ish, the UK media, especially the ones from Norway, have taken quite a clear stance and done a quite focused thing on I really want this. So that has probably also done something.
But social and digital media has enabled, I think something like 48% said that they got, of the people who voted to leave, so they got information directly from the Leave campaign or from politicians. So that was much harder to do in an era before social media and everyone to have their channels, because it all had to be mediated through the media. Now they don't, the media is less important.
Still two more, the two last from the audience. Ellen first.
The advertisers seem to be rather consistent in their divorcing the media houses. Are there any countries in the study that shows any growth in other revenues? Is there anywhere else for the media houses to turn, except use of readers, of course?
Maybe you have comments on this. I mean, broadly, advertising and reader. So digital advertising has got so many problems that there's much more focus on reader revenue, but of different types. So subscription is one type. People are starting to look at micropayments, but I don't think people think that's going to provide major revenue. People are definitely looking at video advertising because, at least in the short term, I don't personally believe in the long term, but in the short term, there are higher premiums there. Sponsored content is obviously the sort of the great white hope for a lot of media companies is to use their platforms and their relationships with audiences to allow brands to create content or to become agencies that produce content for brands. So essentially becoming publishers as media agencies. Everyone's looking at all of these things. It's really hard to see how any one of those is going to make up for the loss of print advertising. In fact, it's not. So it's a combination of lots of different things and cost cutting and consolidation, I think, which is what we're in for. It's slightly depressing.
Again, in a world without print, I think the direction we are going now, you can finance quality journalism. I think it's possible. I think what's happening on digital subscription is really positive, and it's only the beginning. I also think that we see that we are getting a smaller share of the advertising market than actually we should. So what we call context is underrated just now. And my tip is that that will swing a little. I noticed that Procter & Gamble, I think it's the world's largest advertiser, now decided not to use Facebook for targeted advertising anymore. It decided that just a few weeks ago. I also see that media houses either do like Dagbladet that hooks up with Google, or other companies that goes with, for example, Nexus. They are now getting good at doing what Facebook has been good at. So we haven't been good enough at developing value for the advertisers in the digital space, but I'm pretty optimistic that we will get a better share of that. However, the cost of print is hard to really change fundamentally. We can make it leaner. So that I think that is about, at some point, there will be a tipping point. I'm absolutely convinced there is a market for print for many, many years, but it's about how expensive it will be, the cost thing. So we'll see.
We have the last person now from the audience, and then Pam will answer her questions or comments, and just round off. Please.
This is for Espen Egil Hansen. You said that you're planning an alternative platform with other media houses in Norway. That made me very curious. Can you be more specific about it? What is it, a kind of bundle, or what is it?
Sure. We already are working with this. Actually, Aftenposten just in June started to publish on a little part of this platform, and this part is just the publishing part. And we built it together with VG, Aftonbladet, in Sweden, sister company there, Svenska Dagbladet, and the subscription papers in Norway. So that's a little part of it. Then I was talking about data, which is the bearer of information today. There we have hooked up with the rest of Schibsted. So we are, as you know, in 40 markets around the world. Here in Norway, Finn, and the media houses. And we now share technology, we share data, and we, starting from a few days from today, technologists and product managers will work together. And what we are trying to do is to recreate. If you imagine a newspaper in the old times, they had classifieds. You could sell a bicycle or a house, and you had journalism side by side, and that package was very powerful in a monopoly. That was really it. But then they have debundled. Classifieds today don't need journalism to be transported. Ads doesn't need journalism in the same way. But actually what we see that Facebook has done is to rebundle. They use data, our data. From when you are reading our journalism, then they get information about you, and they combine that with data, the more commercial data. So why should we let them do that? So this is a project now, and I think it's looking really, really positive so far. And again, we do this for our own media houses now, but we have already invited other media houses to look at it. Are you interesting? And who knows? At least from a technical point of view, we have made it to scale globally.
Final comments, Halvor?
Can I introduce another question, though, if I may? No, it's about the NRK.
NRK.
Yeah, because I think it's a shame we haven't talked about the NRK and the NRK's role here as a public service broadcaster. So, if I may, well, the question to Nick would be, I get the sense from the report that the situation in Norway, that kind of you read out of your research, is that the NRK is doing well, and there's now that much controversy seems to be a big kind of problems between the NRK and the commercial media business in Norway. Is that a correct reading for me? And the question to the other panelists would be, are you guys fine now? Are you all fighting Facebook, and is that why you're not fighting each other anymore?
Well, I just think it's difficult. What I was really saying was that actually across Europe you find public service broadcasters under huge pressure for all kinds of reasons. So under commercial pressure, the legitimacy is in real question because young people are no longer watching the broadcast to the same extent, so they cannot then have a universal license fee or tax for a public service broadcast if it remains as a broadcaster, and yet commercial companies say, no, you can't go into digital, you can't go into social media. I mean, it's different in different countries, but broadly that debate is raging across Europe. And apart from the BBC, which is also subject to all of these things, but there is a real demographic problem for all of those public service broadcasters. And if we think there is a value to public service media, then it seems to me absolutely obvious that they have to be allowed to compete with commercial providers, commercial newspapers in digital. And this is obviously becoming even more critical because of the internet becoming video capable. So this issue is becoming even sharper, and the commercial interests are flexing. So I think we just need to be much clearer about what the value of public service is in general, and how that plays out in the digital realm.
Looking at me.
Yes.
Well, I'm not the Director General of the NRK, so but I have been doing research at the Reuters Institute for half a year now on media's role in democracy in changing times. And I think you are, Nick, more or less partly right in we're not sure where the salvation for commercial media is going to come from. And I am getting increasingly worried that there will be a willingness to get the NRK to sort of save a business model that sort of doesn't work. And I think that is a dangerous place to go for us as a society, because we're a small country in a big world. And what you actually realize when you live outside Norway for half a year is that this country is quite different from most of the world. And even the UK is a lot less well-functioning than Norway. And I'm a bit worried that we might lose a lot of stuff. And it's not because, well, obviously I have an NRK perspective from working there, but my worry is more a worry for society than a worry for the NRK in itself, because it was easy to set up the NRK in the 1920s, 1930s, but I don't think we will ever build something like that again. And we should be really careful how we handle it.
Well, it sounds like there are some Donald Trumps that want to close down NRK, and that's just not true. Yeah, let's build a wall. Let's make them pay the wall. That's not true. There is a great support for NRK. I'm one of the supporters. However, I think we need a more holistic view on Norwegian media. What kind of media landscape do we want? There is a clear danger now. NRK receiving 5.5 billion crowns a year. That is subsidizing one business, and of course that influences a lot on other businesses. That is clear. Then you have other ways of supporting or making a media market as you want, but I won't use this opportunity to I don't think the main issue now is NRK, but that we I think I think actually you have a great role there in your mediemangfoldsutvalget to see really holistic on what kind of media landscape do we want. Yes, we need a public broadcaster, it has support, but we also need many independent editorial and professional companies around the coast. And so the discussion is, how do we use this money the best? I'm personally not convinced that giving all the 5.5 billion to one company is the best. I think NRK could do a better job on changing how you use that money. I think you could learn from other media companies, and I think maybe just as a thought, if you take 10% of those money and you gave to production around the country, maybe you could get more journalism out of that. So it's not a case to shut NRK down, but I think we should rethink where are we using the money today, and could it be done better?
I'm afraid I have to correct you in your perception of NRK as a business and a company, and quote a leading Norwegian politician from the discussion about NRK in the parliament on March the 1st. NRK is our national campfire place, vårt nasjonale leirbål. So I think NRK's future is pretty bright.
Expensive wood.
To judge after the present majority in the parliament. Hildegunn, final wise word?
Well, just to follow up Halvar's question about whether we are friends now, and I think I think actually we could benefit from far more collaborations and sharing. I'm not sure we are that good friends yet, necessarily, not enough, and certainly NRK plays a huge role in that and should be playing a far stronger role in getting that sort of. They are. With those sorts of resources as well, they can do so much in terms of innovation and that they can also share and for all those small editorial companies all around, scattered around the country as well. So, yes.
What I do know, I'm pretty sure that NRK will be the first one to join our platform, because as long as you publish on Facebook, you will have to publish on other platforms as well. That's really important. You can't support one and the biggest competitor in the commercial market. So I'm very, very sure that we soon can agree on that.
I want to emphasize that what I said about NRK now was not my personal opinion, but the expression of the political majority. We'll end now. Thanks to all for coming, especially to Nick Newman and the Reuters Institute, etc. The rest of the name. Espen Egil Hansen from Aftenposten, Hildegunn Soldal from Arendal, Halvard Moe from University of Bergen, and Anders Hofseth from NRK. And I was looking through this brilliant digital news report to find a really striking quotation to end this event, as I now and then do, looking for something really optimistic and reassuring to accompany us cheerfully into the night. I didn't find any. Thank you, and stay safe.